Today's lesson is why you should stop making New Year's resolutions. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And, of course, New Year's Day was just a couple of weeks ago, and it's traditional for people to make a New Year's resolution, something they're going to do in their life in the coming new year to improve themselves. Did you make a New Year's resolution this year, Kiki?
Well, Roger, I make one every year, but do I follow through with them? I think most of the time I don't.
Okay, well, of course, you have time to make another New Year's resolution when Chinese New Year comes up in February. And, well, I stopped making New Year's resolutions a long time ago for the same reason. I usually don't follow through on them. I've been making New Year's suggestions in recent years in order to maybe pursue some goals or something like that. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Too many people make those New Year's resolutions and they just don't follow through on them. So we're going to suggest that you stop making those New Year's resolutions and do something else instead. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson and we'll come right back.
Why you should stop making New Year's resolutions. New Year's is a time for making resolutions. Typically, people do this in order to break a bad habit, such as eating junk food or start a new activity, like keeping a journal. The problem is that most people set themselves up for failure when they make a resolution.
大家好，标题中我们来看到名词 resolution， 它的意思是决心、决定或是解决，也可以是解析度的意思。例如 The brothers made a resolution not to fight with each other anymore. 这对兄弟下定决心再也不跟对方争吵。又或者说 This machine can print out images that have a high resolution. 这台机器可以印出高解析度图片。再来介绍片语 set somebody up for 名词，它的意思是让某人处于……例如 Consistent work sets Jeff up for tiredness and hunger. 持续不断的工作使 Jeff 又饿又累。再举个例子 Daisy's shopping habits set her up for credit card debt. Daisy 的购物习惯使她背负卡债。
Okay, so in the title here, we begin with the word why, and this particular title is not actually a question, okay? If you put the word why or what or who or whatever at the beginning of a sentence, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a question. In this particular case, we're giving you the reason why you should stop making New Year's resolutions in the following article.
That's right. And here we see the word resolution, and basically it's a word that means that you're going to make a firm decision to do or not to do something. So for an example, a resolution could be the answer to a problem that you've been having. So I haven't been doing a lot of reading, so my New Year's resolution would be to read at least one book per season.
That's not a very ambitious goal there. My goal last year was to read maybe one book every 2 weeks or so.
Wow.
But in this particular case, we're suggesting that you stop making those New Year's resolutions. And here in the first paragraph, it says, New Year's is a time for making resolutions. As we said, it's traditional for people to make a New Year's resolution. And typically, or usually, people do this in order to break a bad habit, such as eating junk food, or start a new activity like keeping a journal or exercising more or whatever. So maybe you want to break a bad habit. Maybe you drink too much beer or something like that. Or maybe you smoke cigarettes and you want to quit smoking. That means you're going to break a bad habit. Or you could stop eating junk food. Or you could do something new.
That's right. It could be something that you've been wanting to do for a long time and you haven't had the right motivation to do so. So usually a lot of people, when they get to the new year, they'll decide, I've been wanting to learn how to rock climb. So this year, my new resolution would be to start taking rock climbing lessons. So it's usually a good time or a good way to encourage yourself to do something. Now, whether or not a person actually goes through with it, we'll find out more throughout the article. But continuing with our article, the problem is that most people set themselves up for failure when they make a resolution. So we kind of touched a little bit about that. Sometimes people set unrealistic goals for themselves. They kind of shoot too high. So there are various reasons why people give themselves a hard time when they set themselves up for a failure. So when you're setting yourself up for something, usually you kind of already know that it's not going to work out. But even though you know it's not going to work out, you're still saying, oh, I'm going to do that. So that's usually what it means when somebody sets themselves up for something, and usually it's in failure.
Yep, to set someone up means to prepare them for something. This could also be used if you don't like somebody in the company, for example. You just hate this coworker, and so you want the boss to fire them. So you try to set them up. You try to make it look like that person stole money from the company or something like that. So you try to frame them or set them up. But in this particular case, you're just preparing yourself to fail because you're probably making a resolution that is just too ambitious. There's no way you can fulfill that resolution. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson. Let's move on now to the second part.
The reason most resolutions fail is that they're typically too general or unrealistic, which makes them hard to keep. Keeping a resolution implies changing our core habits and adopting certain behaviors that may feel unnatural or uncomfortable to us. This is a difficult task, and making a resolution often won't give us enough motivation to make such changes. In fact, 80% of resolutions are abandoned by February, according to research.
(第二部分介绍形容词 unrealistic， 意思是不切实际的或是不现实的。例如Kurt's goal of becoming a millionaire by the time he's 20 is a bit unrealistic. Kurt 要在20岁前成为百万富翁的目标有点不太实际。又或者说 Many people didn't like the movie because they felt that the story was unrealistic. 很多人不喜欢这部电影，因为他们觉得故事不切实际。接着我们看到动词 imply， 这个字有意味着、表明或是暗示的意思。例如Many critiques from the citizens imply that the mayor's policies have been a failure. 许多来自市民的批评意味着市长的政策失败。或是 When speaking with her parents on the phone, Haley often implied that she didn't have enough spending money at college. 跟父母讲电话时 Haley 常常暗示她上大学零用钱不够。再来是动词 adopt， 意思是接纳、采用，也可以是领养的意思。我们可以说The problem was solved when the research team adopted a different strategy. 该研究团队采用不同的策略后，问题就解决了。再举一个例子 Danny will go with his family to adopt a dog this weekend. 这周末 Danny 会跟家人一起去领养一只狗。下一个看到名词 motivation， 它是动机或是诱因的意思。例如 Ava has been tired recently and has had no motivation to work. Ava 最近很累，没有工作的动力。或者 Joe's primary motivation for selling his car is that he hardly ever drives it. Joe 出售车子的主要动机是他几乎不开它。最后看到 abandon 这个单字，它是动词，为放弃、抛弃或是遗弃的意思。例如 After being stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic for hours, we abandoned our plans to go to the beach. 我们困在车阵中好几个小时，因此放弃了去海边的计划。再看一个例子 Melissa's dog had been abandoned by her former owners. Melissa 的狗是被前饲主弃养的。
Let's talk about the second part of our lesson. And it starts off by telling us the reason most resolutions fail is that they're typically too general or unrealistic, which makes them hard to keep. So when we're talking about making resolutions, you really should think about how you want to plan this resolution or what kind of goals you're trying to set. So in this first sentence, we're talking about resolutions that are typically too general. So when something is too general, it's not specific enough. So for example, a general resolution could be, I want to exercise more. But how do you want to exercise more? Do you want to go to the gym more? Do you want to take up yoga? Or do you want to do other activities to encourage yourself to exercise more? So by adding more detail or adding a more concrete plan to your resolution, you are more likely to succeed in your resolution than to fail.
For example, you make a New Year's resolution to lose 10 kilos in 2 months or something like that. Well, that is just unrealistic. It is really difficult to lose weight that quickly. So maybe you should be more realistic and say, well, I'd like to lose maybe 5 kilograms during the whole year. That might be easier to accomplish.
So when your resolutions are either too general or unrealistic, it makes them hard to keep because you don't have specific rules or more detailed goals that you can keep or you can follow. It's hard for a person to follow through with these resolutions. So keeping a resolution implies changing our core habits and adopting certain behaviors that may feel unnatural or uncomfortable to us. So in order for us to complete our goals for the year or to keep our resolutions, sometimes it means that we have to change who we are and our habits and perhaps do things that are new that might not feel natural to us, and we might feel uncomfortable.
That we might. So again, if you want to keep that resolution, it implies changing our core habits. So to imply just means it means something, but it's not really obvious. Maybe you say something to someone else and you're kind of hinting at something and they'll say, are you implying something? Do you mean something else besides what you're saying? And this, of course, implies, or it kind of subtly means that we need to change our core habits. Core just means at the base of something, like an apple core, for example, but these are the habits that we've had for many, many years. They're very difficult to change. They're part of our person. They're our core habits. And of course, we need to adopt certain behaviors that may feel unnatural or uncomfortable to us. To adopt means to have this as a part of your behavior, or you bring it into your life. You could adopt a child, for example, if you know an orphan or something like that and want to give them a family. But yes, indeed, you start having these behaviors, and of course, they'll be unnatural and uncomfortable. You just won't be used to them.
That's right. And this is a difficult task. And making a resolution often won't give us enough motivation to make such changes. So sometimes when we have to do things that feel unnatural or uncomfortable to us, it makes it really hard for us to keep going. So unless you can feel really motivated or you can feel really strongly about keeping up with this new habit or this new behavior that you have to change, it's really hard for you to keep that motivation and to make these changes. So what motivation means is the reason or reasons for acting or behaving in a particular way. So when you want to lose weight, what is your motivation? Is it because you want to look good for everyone? You should have a motivation that makes you happy. So the right motivation would be, I want to lose weight because it makes me feel better. So what are your motivations that can really keep you going? And usually positive motivations are things that you should be doing for yourself to make yourself happy and make yourself better.
Maybe you know somebody who wants to go to Japan. Well, what is your motivation to go to Japan? Well, I want to go there and study Japanese. I want to learn some other things. That's my motivation. And in fact, 80% of resolutions are abandoned by February, according to research. So to abandon something means to leave it behind. Everybody leaves. You desert this place. And of course, sometimes in cities, we see abandoned buildings, buildings that aren't used anymore, but they're just sitting there and not being used. So again, many people just give up on their resolutions by the month of February, so it seems like making that resolution was a big waste of time. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third part.
Instead of making a resolution, set yourself a goal. A goal is more specific and realistic because it can be achieved through well-defined tasks. For example, the resolution, lose weight, can be turned into the goal, exercise for an hour tomorrow, and eat a piece of fruit instead of candy for the next 3 days. It's harder to fail with such simple and well-defined tasks. So make only one resolution this year. Stop making resolutions.
Let's wrap things up. Instead of making a resolution, set yourself a goal. A goal is more specific and realistic because it can be achieved through well-defined tasks. So instead of making such a big commitment to a resolution, you can give yourself some goals. Goals are smaller things that you can do to achieve different aspects or different things that you want to do. They might be smaller, but every small goal can add up to a big achievement. So instead of making a big resolution, you can give yourself goals, and a goal can be more specific and more realistic because they can be achieved through well-defined tasks. So well-defined tasks means you can tell yourself, oh, if I do 1 hour a day of endurance exercise, that is a good start for me to start my new exercise routine. So small goals can lead you up to bigger things.
Right, and that does sound realistic. It sounds practical. It sounds like something that you can actually do. And again, it can be achieved through well-defined tasks. And as you said, you can define what that task is going to be. You're going to define ahead of time exactly what you're going to do. So yes, indeed, you don't want to make a resolution. You just set yourself a goal. For example, the resolution lose weight can be turned into the goal exercise for an hour tomorrow and eat a piece of fruit instead of candy for the next 3 days. So that is very specific there. Yes, indeed, I think most people make the resolution of losing weight. Most people feel they're too fat. And of course, they make these unrealistic goals for themselves. They cannot reach that goal and they give up in February and start eating lots of pie and cake and stuff like that. And in this particular case, though, you're more specific. You turn it into a goal. You're going to exercise for an hour tomorrow, and you're also going to eat a piece of fruit and not candy for the next 3 days. Yes, these are small little baby steps.
Right, and your baby steps can lead to something bigger. It's harder to fail with such simple and well-defined tasks. So when you have these very specific goals and these smaller tasks for you to do, it's harder to fail at them because you're giving yourself the proper opportunity to complete the things that you want to do. So when you give yourself a more simple goal, and maybe you have several different goals, and they're well planned or they're more specific, it's not as hard for you to fail at them and you can complete them easily. And the more goals you complete, you feel motivated to do more.
Exactly. So yes, you won't fail if you have these simply defined tasks. If you spell them out ahead of time and you know exactly what you're doing, well, then you're more likely to succeed with those resolutions and you will not fail. So make only one resolution resolution this year, stop making resolutions. Yes, that is a good suggestion, but still, you should think of some other ways to improve yourself. And yes, don't set your goals too high. Try to be realistic and maybe give yourself some suggestions or some smaller resolutions that can be achieved in smaller steps. Like, don't tell yourself you're going to read 100 books in the whole year. You know, that's unrealistic. Just say, oh, I'm going to read one book a month and then see what happens after that.
That's right. And I think these resolutions sometimes tend to be a structure that people give too much pressure, but resolutions can change throughout the year, right?
They certainly can, and that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's now listen to Hanny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分的第二句提到，坚持决心意味着改变我们的核心习惯，并采纳某些可能会让我们感到不自然或不舒服的行为。文中是用到动词 adopt 来表达接纳、采用的意思。那不晓得同学们有没有曾经把 adopt 还有 adapt还有 adapt 这三个单字搞混呢？我们就来试着区分这几个容易混淆的单字吧。好，第一个是 adopt， 这个单字里面的 opt 当动词的时候表示选择、挑选，尤其是指优先选择某事物。那么当我们要采纳某个方法或是采用某事物时，会做出选择嘛？还有像领养动物时，我们也会去挑选最适合自己的宠物。所以同学们也许可以用 opt这个单字的意思去联想到 adopt， 它有采用、采纳、领养的意思咯。好，那再来看到 adapt， 它的字首 ad 是表示朝向，在这边带有强调的语义。那么字根 apt 表示适合、符合。那我们再看到说 adapt， 其中这个 apt 其实本身就可以当形容词，它是指说适当的或者是恰当的、合适的。同学们可以想象，要使某人事物变得合适，朝往适当的方向发展，那中间当然就会需要经过一些改造调整嘛。那用这样的方式也许可以联想到 adapt， 它是指适应或者是使什么适合或是有改编的意思。再来我们看到 adept adept， 它可以当形容词或名词。当形容词是形容熟练的、擅长的或是内行的，那么当名词是表达能手、行家。同学们，你可以把这个其中的去跟 expert 专家，或者是去跟 excellence 优秀、杰出来做联想，这样也许就可以想到 adept 它有那种熟练、内行的意思咯。好，那么课文第三部分他提到说 Instead of making a resolution, set yourself a goal。 与其定下决心，不如为自己设定一个目标。句子里面的 instead of 它是表达代替而不是，那它是片语间系词，后面要接名词或动名词。这个名词或动名词就是被取代的人事物咯。举例来说， Kate ordered tea instead of coffee。 Kate 点了茶而不是咖啡。那这边要比较一下，如果是只有 instead， 它则是表达作为代替，反而却怎么样，常常用来表达某件事情没有做而是做了另一件事，或者是没有选择某事物反而选择了另外一个事物。那注意 instead 它是副词，可以摆在句首或句尾，摆在句首的话就要用逗号跟句子隔开咯。例如 Kate had too much coffee this morning, so she ordered tea instead. Kate 今天早上喝太多咖啡，所以她点了茶作为代替。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Resolution. After failing a test, Curtis made a resolution to study harder for the next one. Unrealistic. Setting unrealistic goals for yourself can lead to disappointment. Imply. Madeline's sudden exit from the meeting implied a lack of interest in the discussion. Core. Honesty is a core value that Mr. Smith believes in. Adopt. Following his heart attack, Bob decided to adopt a healthier diet and a new exercise routine. Motivation. The promise of a reward was a powerful motivation for the team to finish the project on time. Abandon. Due to some unexpected challenges, Marion had to abandon her original plan and come up with a new one.
Discussion Starter starts now.
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, will you start setting yourself New Year's goals instead of resolutions? Why or why not?
Yes, because I think going back to what you said, Roger, about New Year's suggestions, I like that because it's suggesting to me something that I want to try to achieve this year. And something I've learned recently is instead of setting goals for myself, I can set little missions or little quests that I can complete. And those tend to allow me to finish these tasks a lot easier.
Okay, and of course, you can't be too wimpy with your suggestions, though. It needs to be something challenging. But no, I will not be setting goals instead of resolutions for myself this year, since I already said I've got these New Year's suggestions. For example, I would like to start scanning all my old film negatives and slides. That's something I've been wanting to do for many, many years. Some of our listeners out there may not know what those things are, but in the old days, we used film to take pictures, and they were not digital.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.